Hello, thank you for joining us at the presentation on the family. I'm sorry about that, but I just got distracted here on the NobleCon presentation. I just wanted, I had family in my mind because I was looking at this picture of Garibaldi Resources, which I'm the president of. And I see that, at the screen at the top of Nickel Mountain, which there was an outcrop discovered there in 1958 by, well, I guess you could call them a family. The deposit was called Enl after them, and that was that stood for Ed and Lila Freeze. So it's not a treasure as Sierra Madre kind of thing, but it's a little bit more romantic. In any case, Garibaldi Resources has been public since 1994, and our management team has been active in exploration programs. We're an exploration company. We're not a production company yet. We're an exploration company that has been active in Mexico, and also that we accumulate a bunch of properties down there, mostly nickel and copper and gold and base metals. We've got a number of gold properties that came out of that work that we've been advancing slowly down there, but we certainly in 2014, when this property became available, Silver Standard was the syndicate that had funded Ed and Lila Freeze, and that syndicate and the modern Silver Standard version of the company hung on to the deposit until 2014. We subsequently acquired it. The history of the deposit was such that there was about 3 million tons that Silver Standard had outlined. That wasn't proven, and certainly wasn't in our mind, because the history of the deposit goes back to pre 43-101 standards. So, but it was about 3 million tons of 0.7 nickel and 0.6 copper, and it was very, very interesting, and it was a good starting point. So we went and did a number of programs up there. And when we did a sampling program of the outcrop and tested it for what they call tenor, which is the potential for sulfides to carry metal at 100%, the tenor numbers came back extremely high, which attracted a number of ex-Vale, Inco, Sudbury type of professionals. First one was Ed Makala, and he was the original fellow that I'd met with to discuss nickel, because all our experience had been done in Mexico. And so when he came along, he looked at these and he said, look, this tenor is off the charts. It's higher than Sudbury. It's higher than Voisey Bay. And so we kind of went from there, and he came on board as a director and a VP of exploration, having spent 20 years at Inco, including places like Sudbury and at Voisey Bay. Subsequent to that, we were introduced to Peter Lightfoot, who is basically a world-renowned nickel, copper, base metal expert. And he, again, had spent his career running exploration programs for Inco, Vale, at Voisey Bay and at Sudbury, and he's done papers. He's very well published, and he's done papers on Norilsk and Jinshuan in China, and so he's one of the top nickel experts. And when he came on board, we thought, okay, this is very, very interesting. These guys are attracted to this, and they want to get involved with us. And so we went from there. And the very first exploration program that we did in 2015, we did a VTAM survey, mag survey, and then we teed up a drill program, and we got very, very lucky on that very first drill program, which was in 2017, on hole number 14, we went into it with very limited resources, but on hole number 14, we pulled a massive sulfide intersection of 16.8 meters of 8.29% nickel and 4.24% copper. So it kind of went from there, evolved from there, and we raised over $20 million, and we've advanced the deposit and have drilled 96 holes into this thing. And so that's from the genesis to where we are. And I just kind of want to go over the updated slideshow presentation that we're going to go over today. And so Nickel Mountain is in northwest British Columbia, northwest of Smithers. And it is, it's what we think is an amazing value proposition, particularly in the kind of climate that we're in with the suite of minerals in this deposit, which is rather unique. There's, it's nickel, copper, cobalt, but also has palladium. It also has platinum. It also has gold and silver credits, and interestingly enough, platinum group elements. So that there's osmium and ruthenium and interestingly enough, rhodium, which has been the subject of some interesting developments as far as where it's trading at recently. So in any case, we beyond when we go past our forward-looking statements for this slideshow, you're seeing here that the value proposition at Nickel Mountain is the world-class grades. It certainly is in the 10 percentile of nickel deposits on the planet. It's got higher tenor, higher values in Sudbury, higher values in Voisey Bay, higher values in pretty much, there's some nickel in Norilsk that has as high or higher values, but it's pretty amazing. And some of this stuff with the massive sulfides, the highest grades, carry values that are really, outstanding. So you're running massive sulfides anywhere from $800 a ton up to $2,000 a ton. The company here is, as I said, been around since 1994. We've got 121 million shares outstanding. There's a number of smaller funds that have invested in our company. The management owns 12%. One of the larger investors on the planet, Eric Sprott, in the resource sector, anyways, owns over 20%, and private investors own the rest. I've been involved with the company since 1994. Previous to that, spent 24 years financing exploration in the resource sector. Barry DeCastri, one of the founders, and Jeremy Hansen. Barry has spent 40 years in raising funds and marketing, and we've got quite an interesting board with Jeremy Hansen, who is basically took over the reins of VP of Exploration since we tragically lost Everett Makala back in 2019. Everett was a really, really colorful character, and he trained our geologists up there, a group of young geologists, very, very well. And Jeremy has been at the forefront of maintaining, all the moving parts that it takes to keep our 40-man camp moving forward up there. It's really been a challenging kind of environment to operate in by virtue of the fact that even the guys from Inco hadn't seen, anything quite like this, because we're at 2,000 meters or 6,000 feet. It's certainly, there's been an awful lot of deformation as far as the structures that are involved in and associated with mineralization. We've got some really top-notch exploration people outside of Peter Lightfoot. We've got Dr. Craig Gibson, who is from the Mexican side of the equation, but he's very, very experienced geologist down there. Jeremy, as I mentioned, Raymond Goldie is one of the top base metal analysts in the world, and spent his career mostly with Salmon Partners and was involved with the original royalty Boise Bay. The technical advisors, Peter Lightfoot, Peter McGough are down in Mexico, Alain Charret, who's made a number of discoveries down in Mexico. And technical advisors, we got Joe Zamudio, one of the top satellite imaging specialists that has worked in the industry and for the military and the government. Alan King and Jules Lajoie are a couple of the top geophysicists. Jules in particular has been amazing as far as his ability to analyze the electromagnetic, the BHEM that we use down boreholes. And Alan King is, again, spent most of his career at INCO, and he's a top-notch geophysicist that works all over the globe on nickel projects. If you take a look at where the screen here is showing the SK Rift, and it's a very, very critical feature because the entire claim group we have, the Enl and Nickel Mountain and the rest of the claim group to the north and to the east, is along that rift. And so that's a very, very, you'll see some of the larger deposits there like Pretium, which is in production and has some of the highest gold grades ever seen. Eskay Creek, which has historically been, at one time it was the highest grade gold mine in Canada. And since Barrick shut that operation down in 2000 and I think it was 2007. Anyways, Skeena acquired it, and they've redeveloped the situation, have been drilling, and they've come up so far, I think, with 2 million ounces additional and another 2 million inferred. So it's the redevelopment is going well from their perspective. Here's that same map, or that same area with the claims outlined. And you can see Nickel Mountain. All of Garibaldi's properties are in yellow. You can see Nickel Mountain, Nickel Mountain, which is anomaly D, which is designating a geophysical target that was outlined when we did our VTEM survey with Geotech. And so you got Nickel Mountain. You've got Brass Hill. When you first, when they first arrived at Nickel Mountain, it's very interesting how they all commented how you could literally, even at 2,000 meters or 6,000 feet, he says you get off the helicopter and all you can smell is sulfides. And it seems like this whole area here, and I'm not just talking about Garibaldi's claims, but this area that we have here in yellow represents 180 square kilometers. So we've got a very large land package here. We're right in the heart of it. We're surrounded by Seabridge's SM deposit, SK, who's just made a discovery to the south of us, Metalis, Colorado. The SK Creek deposit itself, we've acquired the ground back in 2015, directly bordering the SK Creek, and the 21 A and B deposits trend right onto our ground. So we're really excited about doing work there moving forward. But obviously the ENL was our main focus initially, and it still is the flagship, and it's critical because, when we got involved with this whole situation, early on we recognized the potential for this thing to play into what was starting to evolve. Even early on back in 2015, you could see that the electric vehicles and that whole green revolution that was unfolding, and how these critical metals were going to play into the battery technology that's going to feed and sustain the electric vehicle markets. So I think we're very, very confident in what we have at ENL as far as the potential of it is concerned. It's the scale that is the most fascinating thing. Not only do we have high-grade massive sulfides and this large disseminated sections, but the scale, the amount of room that we have to grow this deposit is, I think, underappreciated at this stage. And the sulfides that seem to poke their heads out to the extent that they do in outcrop. For instance, there's a little circle there, it says Brass Hill, and that's an interesting target. We haven't done a whole lot of work on it. It was copper, zinc, and gold lens. But again, the sulfides there, to the extent you get mineralization in the sulfides, the Brass Hill, for instance, has over 50% zinc. And so when you find these metals in these sulfides in this particular area, there's something really interesting that's gone on here, because the mineralization is off the charts in grade, whether it's gold or even base metals. And that's a unique kind of feature of this entire district. It's a large district, and there's going to be many, many, many more mines discovered up here. And you can see that things like KSM, they have projections of over 45 million ounces, which is a bizarre amount of. Now, these are large, lower grade, large tonnage, lower grade deposits. So the capex on them are going to be something else. But to the extent that the trend continues higher and higher with pricing, I think you're going to see a lot of these deposits are going to be feeding the commodities complex for a long time. You look at those historic numbers on Cascade Creek, they only pulled 3.3 million ounces of gold out of there, but it was at, it was all over an ounce. Like, I think it averaged 45 grams per ton according to this. We've got the ground again bordering that contiguously, and then we've got two very interesting gold prospects at Palm Springs and Triple Faults, and Casper, which is another high grade, showing that is very early stage, but it's very interesting deposit, and we're extremely excited about it. The Nickel Mountain property itself has, beyond these major, obvious, sticking out like a sore thumb, mineralized outcrops and zones, there's so much. Well, we'll show you a map as we move forward about what's going on out there. It's a little blurb on the nickel outlook, because it is such a key piece of where we're headed with this company as far as the deposit for, the Enl deposit. I think the scale is something, the amount of room that we have there. We're moving at a pace where, because our window of exploration is limited, we push for 4 to 5 months every year, but at 6,000 feet it gets very challenging. And so, we've been at it for 4 years. If you add it all up, we probably averaged 4 months a year and 16 months of actual exploration to drill the 96 holes that we've drilled. So it's taken some patience, but I think, it's going to pay off big time. And so you see obviously the nickel inventories are continuing to decline. And when we started off, and I first talked to Everett, I think nickel was something like $4 a pound and copper was under $3. Now all these things are trending higher, $7 a pound recently. A lot of people are projecting much, much higher numbers. Copper is in a similar boat. And it's the highest valuation for a deposit is to have something that's a nickel copper massive sulfide deposit, and the fact that we have all these other cobalt, platinum, palladium, gold, silver, and PGEs is quite a bonus. And with all that in it, with the early results that we've done on metallurgy, is you're getting amazing recoveries, and there's very, very little sign of any problems with deleterious minerals. But the main thing here is to grow the deposit and to realize what kind of potential this thing actually has, because it's way too early to be doing deals where we bring in a larger company. We never say never to something like that, but you'd have to have somebody offer you a deal you can't say no to, because there's just so much scale potential here. It's going to take a little bit more effort to prove that up, and you don't want to be giving away something that's minimal tonnage when there's 10 times or 100 times more tons there. So you got to really be very, very, very cognizant of what you've got here, what kind of potential we got here. Now, this is the actual portion of the presentation that talks about the Enl Intrusion in the Gabriel. So this Gabriel goes on for over 12 kilometers that we've actually mapped and sampled Gabriel, and it looks like it goes on for maybe over 15 from some of the sampling that we've done over at Mount Shirley, and certainly it's somewhere between 50 to 20 kilometers at least. And so it goes from the Enl and it strikes northeast, and at Enl itself, you're looking at where we've drilled. The purple is the mineralized Enl Gabriel, and we've got 96 holes into this. Now, the very first couple of years, because how rare and unusual this thing was, and the fact that the highest value of was the massive sulfides, we were really thinking in terms of accelerating this and trying to outline as much of the massive sulfide as we could. As we've drilled, we've gone farther. It's a steeply dipping mineralized gabbro that is both, the mineralization is both, has a magnetic feature, and it has a conductive feature, and it has a geochemical signature. And so we have enough now to continue to do a better and better job at tracking this. The big challenge is, again, the topography on the side of that mountain is challenging. We're going to have to start drilling deeper and deeper because the intrusion is wide open, and the trend of this thing continues going deeper and going east. And so there's a lot of area here that's unexplored. It looks to us that the massive sulfides, similar to most of these deposits that, according to Peter, are conduit driven. You're looking for basically pipes where the massive sulfides would accumulate in gravity, and we're definitely on the track of this thing as far as the mineralization is concerned. We're really thinking that there's going to be a larger pool of massive sulfides. That's the projection. And while there's been a lot of deformation, a lot of structural deformation because of the mountain building process and where this thing is located at 6,000 feet, we're confident that we're looking at some other geophysical tools that are going to look deeper for us and be more cost effective than, so we've got targets that we can go after down there. That we still have targets as we speak that are conductive targets down there that we have yet to intersect. So we're never going to run out of targets anytime soon here, but we'd like to see something of scale that is going to maybe lead us to that sweet spot where there's much larger pool of this material. I mean, this is magmatic. According to Peter, a lot of this came up literally from the mantle. And so you're talking about a long distance and a huge amount of fluids pushed up under tremendous pressure. And so there's going to be larger pools of this. We're maybe halfway down the slope at Nickel Mountain. When you get to the valley floor, you're at 900 meters. So even to get to sea level, you got to go through the valley floor, which Everett said he always predicted we would be drilling off the valley floor at some point. Here's where you've got the outline of the intrusion, the Enl Nickel Mountain Gabbro, relative to where we've intersected it. And it looks fairly narrow, and a lot of the area on either side of it is wide open. We just haven't drilled enough. And there's talus fields on top, so it's all been basically with electromagnetic geophysics and mag surveys and drilling that we've intersected this thing. The borehole EM has been very, very helpful. Jules has been amazing at modeling this stuff and giving us the XYZ coordinates to intersect mineralization down there. This is just more of a curiosity at the top of the outcrop where the NL outcropped. We went to the core shack at PDAC the year before last, and we found a large block of nickel copper mineralization, and we cut a block out of it and polished it up and took it. That's almost pure. It's about 400 pounds. It's almost pure nickel copper, massive sulfides. So it's interesting to see that kind of thing when you just cut into it, and that how that got to that up to 6,000 feet is the pathway is what we're looking for. There again is the Gabbro targets, and it's got some samples of some Gabbro way over to the east. That's about 15 kilometers away, and we're getting nickel and copper over there at surface in outcrop in situ. And then if this screen you'd need to kind of blow up. You can see this presentation on the company's website, Garibaldi Resources. And to say that we have a lot of surface outcrop and a lot of float and a lot of boulder fields and a lot of mineralization concentrated in this whole trend is quite an understatement. So if you want to take a look at what we've been doing exploration-wise and how much we've got to follow up on, there's a lot of things to follow up on here. That's certainly for sure. The sulfide mineralization at Nickel Mountain is certainly, again, it's top tenor. It's right up there with some of the best deposits on the planet. And there's some comparative deposits here. This is just a list of the top 10 intercepts as far as grade is concerned. You look down near the bottom, there's the original 16.75 meter intersect, 8.29% nickel, 4.24% copper, and 0.2 about cobalt, platinum, palladium, gold, silver. Since then, we've continued to intersect some lower grade in the disseminated sector. For instance, hole 89 of this year. So we started off, this year was challenging in the sense that it was the worst weather we've ever experienced up at the deposit. And still, we managed to triple the size of the footprint, which was originally 200 meters to over 650 meters now. And we also drilled a couple of the longer holes as far as intercepts are 151 meters of 0.56 nickel, 0.61 copper. And I don't think we've got hole 96 on here, but that also had 130 plus meters of a little higher grade than that. I think it was 0.61 nickel and similar copper. But in any case, there's you can see some pictures of the core there. There's some work going to be done on the geophysics side, and we're going to take a look at this deposit from the perspective of going much deeper. And that's so we're also looking at ways of moving the drill rigs, the drill pads, farther down the mountain. We don't want to have to be sitting up top of the mountain drilling down through that. We're looking at different areas. We have an adit that was built there by Sumitomo back in the early 70s, and it's a 1,500 foot adit into the side of the hill, about 500 meters below the actual outcrop at the top. And I think their intentions were to intersect what they thought was a pipe going straight up and down, which they didn't find. But we found where, they kind of told us, okay, they intersected nickel and copper mineralization, but it was low grade. And they kind of told us where not to drill. For some reason, all of their holes were drilled horizontally. And it made no sense at all. They didn't go up or down, or it just was all horizontal. To this day, we're not sure why they did that, but again, they left us with an adit that is in pristine condition even after all these years, just because it's so cold up top. It's in amazing condition. So we've looked at maybe refurbishing that and doing some geophysics in there, and also possibility, because there's 3 underground drill galleries, drill stations there, so that there's even the possibility of drilling from under there. These long intercepts, again, from my experience in financing juniors, it's interesting that you're basically got on a copper deposit, you've got about 0.5%, which what the majors are looking for. So if you get anything over 100 meters of copper at 0.5%, it interests larger companies. And nickel, the laterites are lower grade, but they're still looking for copper. It's 0.75, 0.1%. Laterites, unfortunately, aren't going to be the very first choice for battery technology, because you need class 1 sulfide nickel. But there is some talk about laterites. They may be the future, but you're probably going to need dramatically higher nickel prices because they're so large, those deposits, and the capex on them is monstrous. So even the technology to generate and process these things is still a work in progress. So well, I think what we've got here is rather unique. There's not too many of these sulfide deposits on the planet that anyone's aware of. So we're in good shape for what's about to come with the green revolution. Now, because of all the property that we have, this is not to distract from the Enl nickel deposit on Nickel Mountain, but we've got so much mineralization to follow up there, including some of these gold prospects. So this year, because of the fact that we had issues and distractions regarding the weather, so we didn't want to have a bunch of people sitting in camp on standby, playing poker. We have this Casper project, which was very early stage, but we've advanced it to a drill stage by shifting our personnel and moving them over to Casper from the same camp, and utilize the productivity, just made sure that we had maintained our productivity. But in any case, the bottom line on it was that we've got a very interesting vein system here. We call it the Casper quartz gold vein system, because there's we've tracked about 8 separate veins now. 5 of them are mineralized, and 4 of them actually have visible gold. So we're looking at some really interesting numbers here. We're not sure how big this thing is, but it keeps growing. I know we've got a soil anomaly that's at least 500 meters long. The vein itself was uncovered and trenched, mechanized trench, over 130 meters to date. And we did a very methodical sampling program across that channel sampling, 1 meter, 1 meter, all the way across. And so we've got some pretty interesting numbers here. And we just finished a short 4-hole program. We want to see how the thing dips and get some idea about how, in fact, we should best attack this thing, because I think we're probably going to do some more geophysics before we drill again, but it's really, really encouraging to see the consistency in numbers like that and what it portends, because there's a resistivity anomaly to the south of this 100 meters, and there's a large rhyolite. Well, we're not sure the size of it yet, but there seems to be a couple of groups of rhyolites that are 300 meters to the east, and we've been sampling, 1 gram, 2 grams, up to 4.5, 5 grams in this rhyolite. So we're looking at maybe something that has the potential over to the east that could carry some bulk tonnage, and that's what we're looking for. But so that's the gist of what we're doing up at Enl. We're making our plans as we speak on the next program, and we're having discussions with a number of our larger shareholders and a couple of funds. And I think we're going to unlock what value we can out of Enl, but we're also, I think, you're going to be hearing more and more as things evolve on some of these other projects. But Enl is the focal point, it's the flagship, it's the highest value, and it's something that we're all convinced is going to be a very significant situation for our shareholders. And so we'll see how that all unfolds, but we're getting ready for the next season. And 2020 was, to be very, very frank, not a great year, just because of the weather and the COVID and everything. I think most people will be quite happy to see the backside of 2020, but we're looking forward for a prosperous 2021. And we're quite excited about how we're going to attack this in the next round of drilling here, because we think we're heading in the right direction. Now we'll turn it over to Q&A.
Thank you, Steve. I'm Mark Reichman, the Senior Research Analyst who covers the metals and mining sector at Noble Capital Markets. I'd like to remind our viewers, if you have a question, please click on the icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen and type in your question. I think we're going to be a little limited because we want to wrap this up by 3:40. So one of the questions is, if the topography presents challenges to explore, how difficult will it be to mine? And I think you kind of touched on that in terms of moving the drill rigs down the mountain.
Yeah, and that's on the exploration side as far as moving the rigs down. As far as actual production is concerned, I don't think that's, as a matter of fact, if you look at outside of an open pit scenario, we would have the cheapest kind of mining that you could, where you drift adits and you would go underneath the mineralized zone and you basically use gravity as a feed. So that I think is actually quite a bonus. That's one of the places where the topography will be a plus, because you've got the elevation and you can use a gravity feed to recover the mineralization. But certainly the topography, as far as the geometry of drilling in certain directions, has been limiting. But there's no doubt that we've got solutions. We've already discussed a number of solutions about where we could, and there's also the idea of building some platforms, benches, that is. We'll need to get some mechanized equipment up to the slope to a couple of locations and build some benches there from which we can put the drill pads and the drill rigs on and go from there. So there's no problems, only solutions. It's just a question of doing it effectively and productively and cost effectively is the most important thing.
Yeah, it sounded like you were planning to do geophysics really at both of the Casper and Enl. When will you kind of put out your 2021 drilling plans?
We'll definitely update the market as we go along. The launch date will be probably coincide with, and we're having discussions, to be frank. Everybody knows that we're having discussions about the financing. And so once that is in place, we'll provide some more detail. And we're doing a lot of analysis right now about what to do in what sequence and what's most cost effective. But I think we'll have a fairly strong plan now, because we've, this last go around here, even though the weather was what it was, and we only drilled 12 holes, which was, even the first year, hole 14, we drilled 14 holes the first year when we had very, very limited resources. And in this case, we had much more resources, but the weather was just Mother Nature's Mother Nature. And even so, we managed to, with the holes that we drilled, triple the footprint of the mineralization. Follow, as we projected, as Peter Lightfoot and these guys projected, follow the trend along that dip through those chambers that were there, just like they predicted. And, now we're seeing mineralization past 645 meters, and it continues to go down. So we definitely want to come up with a game plan where we're going to have a drill pad or two down at a lower elevation to attack these things at a different angle.
Well, Steve, I think that's all the time we have. Very interesting projects and an informative presentation, and thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much for your time.